Hi, I'm Rob Howard, and welcome to Gallery Teachers Masterclass. Today's lesson, From the Classroom to the Boardroom, Becoming a Business English Professional. Basically, my background, I come from business and run a few businesses. So let's talk about why are students today studying? Is it to travel or to go to Disney? Is it to watch the latest movie on Netflix? Is it to go for higher education overseas? Or is it to make a lot of money in their future? And what do students today think their future looks like? Well, most students today think that their future is in the bag. They think that they're going to become influencers online, or they're going to become celebrities, or, as my other student, Nicole here, start a large business in gaming and become famous. Fortunately, it's not the reality for all of our students these days. So what does our current students' future look like? It's basically a clean slate. And that's what we're here for, is to help them fill up their slate. Now, you've probably all seen the 2002 Skills Outlook, which is just about a month away. And this was done by the World Economic Forum. And it tells us about the growing features and the declining features for future job market. And if you notice here, a lot of complex, analytical, critical leadership skills, all dealing with communication. And the basic skills will be going away. Now, the job landscape that we're looking at is basically in IT or dealing with management and communication skills. So there are new competencies that are coming out, and this is new needs that our students have. Among the countries in the world, when we look at science, reading, and math scores, doing pretty well, but we're not doing as well in English. So let's take a look at some of these new competencies. And this comes from the framework of the competencies that are needed for 2030. And these are skills that our students are going to need. But in order to help our students, we need to increase our ability to teach these skills to them. So, of the competencies, there are 7 main skills and attributes for employment. They are people management, personal development, leadership, communication, logical reasoning, and transferable and technical competencies. Now, of these 7 skills and attributes, these break down to 35 core competencies, which I won't go through everything, but you can take a look. And you'll notice in the communication skills, very heavy in collaborative working and communication. And if you look at each of these other skills, you'll see that behind all of these, communication skills are vital. So, what we need to decide, what are we talking? Are we speaking with and teaching business students or current business professionals? which is what most business English teachers are doing right now. But the future is going to be teaching up-and-coming students more business communication skills, and this is where I feel teachers can make improvements starting now. Now, looking at the communication skills, some of these skills teachers aren't aware of. Customer relation management, persuasion perhaps, some collaborative working. We have the writing skills and the speaking and listening skills, but within those skills, there's much more that we have to learn how to teach. Now, if we look at the future and what kind of jobs are going away, many of the common jobs that people counted on, you notice, will probably be replaced by automation. You'll notice at the bottom, things like doctors, lawyers, and school teachers will probably remain. So good news for us teachers. But what does our current students' future look like? Let's take a look at that. And Hugh is the future user of business English and English communication. It's actually, if you look at 2030 as the benchmark, today's 13-year-old is the person who is entering the workplace for 2030. And they will need all these competencies, and we can be teaching them that right now with English. Now, everybody, I'm sure, has heard of the 21st century skills. I won't go through it. I'll just reference it. And these are things we supposedly have been working on for the past few years. But the competencies are much stronger for the future jobs that are going to be out there. So, what we need to take a look at as teachers in general is, what don't students need anymore? Remember, we're in a computer age, and there's no reason for me to have to memorize the countries of the world in their capitals. I can easily pick up a cell phone or a computer and Google it. When I was young, 100 years ago, we had to study and memorize Shakespeare, something I've never used throughout my life. And this was months in English class learning Shakespeare when I could have learned better writing capabilities. I could have learned the grammar rules. I could have learned more vocabulary. And in sciences, we spent months as students in high school having to memorize everything on the periodic table. I'm not a scientist, so this was all wasted time when I could have been learning other skills that would help me in my future career. Now, right now, 54% of the internet is in English, and over 50% of technical and scientific periodicals are only available and written in English, and this is now. Imagine how much larger this is going to become in the future with English as a global language. In just a few years, if not already, 87% of globally based businesses are communicating and requiring English. When I go through looking at classified ads for professional people around the world, an advanced level of English is necessary, and not just general English. It's business English, and being able to communicate with the business skills that they have. Now, this brings to the question, which is more important, fluency or accuracy? It's an age-old argument. It's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Now, if you talk to most teachers these days, everybody will say fluency. In the communicative style, fluency and not being 100% accurate is acceptable. Now, this is great when we're talking general English. People for tourism, clerks, waiters, taxi drivers, using everyday English. But when we start talking about working as a professional, accuracy becomes more important. Think about doctors, lawyers, business people, and teachers. We need accuracy, and we need to focus on that. So when we're talking about fluency, we're talking about the speaking skills. We're talking about meaning, context, and general communication. Yet when we're talking about accuracy, we have to look more closely at writing, grammar, correctness, and content. So we need to find the balance. And when we become business English professionals and upskill, we can help tip the scales to help our students. Now, a quick story about a company that I can't name. Now, I've been dealing with tax lawyers in oil and gas now for almost 15 years, almost 20. And I've gotten to know tax law pretty well as a result. Now, when I was working with one of the tax lawyers who was delivering an email overseas, I noticed this. It says, your tax lawyer handles this particular situation. And knowing the law, that didn't sit right to me. I said, are you sure you mean your? And I checked with everybody involved, and it was that Y. It was meant to say our. Now that single Y made a huge difference to the tune of about $1 billion. Just one letter. So this wasn't a typo. This was a misunderstanding of the way they used the language. So the difference between your and our. And take a look at what a difference just one letter can make. Major difference between few and a few. So this is why accuracy becomes so much more important in business. Now, our workforce right now, filled with men and women, and what we're looking at, though, for the future, for 2030, is today's TikTok and Instagram star. Also, because we have a graying society that does not have a strong level of English, this is causing companies to look at alternatives such as robotics, AI, and developments in machine language and machine learning. So we need to help those 13-year-olds now. Now, perhaps what we need to do is, in addition to upskilling ourselves and learning the skills I'm going to show you, perhaps we need to start working with our students with that now, before they get into the workforce. Skills like interviewing. In the United States, where I grew up, we start working in high school. Yet we were never taught interviewing skills. Most people that are in university are doing internships, need interviewing skills. And of course, in business in the future, we could start with these skills as far into high school. Negotiation skills. Now, these will always be helpful throughout life, and we can start working with negotiating from high school, definitely into university, and it's a must for adults these days. But we as professionals need to know the methods and how to negotiate. Conflict. We need to deal with conflict in schools, and I'm not talking just bullying. It could be conflict between peers, conflict with teachers and students, conflict with administration, because there will always be conflict, and learning how to deal with it within the language scope is key. Professional writing. Now, business writing is different from every other type of writing there is. Normally, we're teaching expository writing or academic writing, but professional business writing has been changing even over the past few years. Things are getting more direct, more concise, and much shorter than the old drawn-out emails we used to send. Collaboration skills. Of course, in any business, we're going to have collaboration in the future. So we need to start building those skills now. We need to train students how to work with others and how to communicate with others when collaborating. Of course, diversity, and all different types of diversity. We can be doing all of these in the English classroom. Presentation skills. Now, in America, we grow up doing presentations from the time we're very young. I was very surprised getting to Brazil and then later working with Russians and Eastern Europeans. Most people have gone all the way through university giving maybe one or two presentations only. Professional presentation skills will be necessary in almost every type of business and every type of job in the future, because you're always doing reporting. So we can work on these now. Questions. Now, as teachers, we're great at asking questions because we're always eliciting information from our students. Yet, our students aren't very well versed at forming questions because they're always answering ours. We need to work with the ability to form proper questions using proper grammar and making something that is understandable, so the person giving the answer, when they're eliciting, will give the information that's needed. So we need to work on these skills and pass these on to our students. Some words from Socrates. Research. Now, there's so much research available on the internet and everywhere. We're constantly seeing research-based numbers. Yet, do we know what to look for to see if the research is true? Much of the research out there is based on hearsay. Much of the research out there is based on things that were myths from years ago, and people just continue to pass on. So we need to teach the skills of how to find out if research was done correctly and if it's really accurate and fits. Now, with this comes discerning. We need to teach them how to discern fake news from real news, fake research from real research. And these are things that we can be doing in the English classroom. Remember, on the internet, 54% is in English, and when you talk about scientific and technical manuals, over 50%. So we have lots to work with, to go through. Finding answers. We need to teach and work with students now on finding different ways of discovering answers, not just using Google. One thing I feel is important, and I've been doing this for years, is teaching students how to actually use a dictionary and how to work with a dictionary. I'm amazed that most people simply type a word into Google, don't do any research on the word, don't do any learning for the different parts of speech for the word, so they're not using a dictionary as a learning tool. They're using Google as a reference for a quick fix. But yet, they're not looking deeper to find out if that word is archaic or actually still used. One of my favorite things I like to do is teach all my students how to use a thesaurus. A thesaurus is one of the greatest tools around for anybody doing any kind of writing, any type of business, because we tend to have to be repetitive for everything we say. I always teach my students when they learn new vocabulary to, number one, learn the word, look it up in the dictionary, and then go to the thesaurus and learn 5 synonyms of that word. This increases their vocabulary tremendously, and I use it every day in my writing and in my emails. Working with YouTube. YouTube is a great free tool where you can search for virtually anything you're looking for. And I have my students use it as a help for pronunciation. Now, I'm not saying that they have to reduce their accent, but proper pronunciation of words. They can go and find this information and use YouTube as a tool to improve. Now, for further resources, and this is for both student and you, the teacher, Khan Academy, Udemy, and Coursera. Now, these are free. They're available, in most cases free, and available online. And how I use these, for example, my accountant used to be my student. And she was a top-level manager and became a top-level director at a large accounting job, the Big Four accounting firm. She knew accounting, but she had never talked about accounting in English. So I had her take Accounting 101 from Coursera. And of course, she knew all the accounting and everything they were doing, but now she saw how the language of accounting in English was used. And I use this for so many different subjects, and I even take some of them myself when I'm dealing with new professionals with something that I'm not familiar with. Entrepreneurship. Now, many universities now are starting programs where they have entrepreneurship programs for their students. This is great information, and we can use this by doing this in English, even in our English classes, dealing with the different aspects of building a business. Quite frankly, many of our students today the younger ones, will have their own businesses in the future. We'll need to come up with business plans. We'll need to talk about target markets. We can help them today, and we need to learn these too. Graphics. Most schools are teaching professional graphics. We need to help them with the English aspect of it, working with the new programs. Every job is going to require graphics in the future. Now, frameworks for decision making. Most people are familiar with the SWOT analysis, but there are many more frameworks that are used professionally throughout the world in different businesses, and we could be teaching our students right now how to work with a Venn diagram, how to work with the SWOT analysis. And this will help them with the language of working within the frameworks. Now, there's many different business applications that are on the market now. Here's just three. You see Trello, you see Jira, and Slack. Now, I work with Kanban and with Slack today. These may not necessarily be the same programs that will be available in 2030, but something similar will be. So we could be teaching these skills now in English and working with them to help students be prepared for that later. The processes. If you follow business at all, you may be familiar with some of these processes: Agile, Scrum, and Kanban. Most IT companies and many large corporations around the world are working with these to work within the organization to streamline things for design, communication, and process building. We can start working with these today. We can use these in the classroom. Graphs. I work primarily with C1 and C2 students, and I'm always amazed, even though they're experts in their own language at finance or economics, when it comes to talking about graphs, they usually say it goes up or it goes down. So many other words and vocabulary we can use and help them with today, talking about graphs. Finance. I'm not saying we have to teach them everything in finance, but they should know the basics. We can teach them the basic vocabulary of investment, of finance, of banking. We also can teach the basics of law. For example, every high school, university student should know their legal rights. They may not sign a contract yet, but they should know their legal rights. And what's amazing to me is people around the world don't know their consumer rights. These are something that we can teach them, again, taking advantage of English. But again, this applies to you as the teacher. Also, basics in accounting, invoicing, write-off, and taxes, something we'll all need to deal with someday. Designing. Anybody who's going into business probably will be dealing with one of these aspects, whether it be advertising, coming up with your own logo, your own website, branding, or dealing with social media. We should be working with these now because the kids are working with it. Let's take advantage of what they're doing on social media in English. Basically, I'm trying to teach my students to become autonomous because they will be lifelong learners and hopefully lifelong users of the language. So I want to give them the skills today that they need tomorrow. And this is for both, but applies greatly to you. Now that you've upskilled as a big business English professional, you have to know your own value because you're teaching so much more than just general English. And business English is a specialty, and it's a growing specialty, and it sets you a step above other teachers as far as where your worth is. Now, rapport, very important for us as teachers. Important that we also teach this to our students. Emotional intelligence, as we said before, diversity. But one thing very important is culture. Because we're looking at a future where we're talking all over the world, whether it be a native speaker to a native speaker, a native to a non-native, whether it be two non-native speakers. We all have different levels and different sources of our English, and we need to understand the culture of language, but also the culture of business and the culture of people. These are skills we should be working on at a much earlier time. Now, I started a program years ago back in Brazil where my young high school students were dealing with, through email, social media, and videos, they were talking with students in Dusseldorf, Germany. And this, I believe it was about 13 years ago. And what they did is they talked about what was your place like? What are you learning? What are your parents like? What are the rules? What are family? So they got to have an intercultural exchange at an early age in English. The nice thing about this is instead of looking at how we're different and how we have so many different aspects of us, I like to get them to look at how we're actually the same. So taking it and rather looking at what is unlike, what is different, which is normally the way we look at things, why don't we find what they have in common? Start off in the positive and find out the things that they have alike. And hopefully they'll start to like other cultures and we'll have a much better world. So communication is done not by yelling and screaming, but it's by a soft voice and a whisper. And let's help them with that. So I'd like to leave you with, teach them to listen and not just hear. Teach them to communicate and not just speak. So, again, to become a business English professional, do a little self-analysis, find out what your weaknesses are, where your need to improve is, and improve it. Define yourself. Are you going to be a teacher, a trainer, a coach, a mentor, a tutor? Quite frankly, once you start getting deeply into business English, you're going to find you're all of these at different times. Figure out what it is you offer, the skills, the background, the talents, the things that make you unique, and bring this to your classroom. Figure out what your niche is. I started off in telecommunications. That was my original niche, but I learned legal. I learned administration. I learned oil and gas. And how did I learn? I asked questions. As a business English professional, this is one of your strongest tools, doing a proper needs analysis to find out exactly what it is your students need, so you know exactly what you need to do to help your student. But also fulfill your needs. I like to find out about my client's business by asking questions. I actually have them teach me what their job is. Asking questions, I do reading, I ask them to send me some journal articles that they read, and I study on every subject. Now, I don't have to become an expert, but I need to know where they're coming from. And professionalize yourself. That means professionalizing your platform, getting a good platform with a good return on investment. Now, know what your value is. We're no longer at the low end of English teachers. As business professionals, we're at the high end. And high quality plus a high level equals a higher price. So know your worth and don't be afraid to ask for it. Adapt. There's a need to adapt yourself. And most of all, be yourself. Don't try and be a business expert. You're not there to teach them business. Remember, business professionals who are already working in business got that job because they understand business in their own language. We're there to help them bring those skills, what they know, and bring that into English so they can communicate and be successful. So they need business English skills. And when we take all of these skills, put them together for our students, put them together for ourselves, we complete the puzzle. So my obligatory quote: and with that, I encourage you to come back and watch more of our Gallery Teachers workshops with continuous professional development. We have workshops on many different subjects. We'll have more surrounding business English. Not everybody may be capable of teaching, but everybody can become a good business English teacher. It takes a lot of training, and it takes a lot of extra skills that general English teachers may not have. So to answer that, with work and with some experience and more skills, I think everybody can be a good business English teacher. Well, a teacher without a business background, in order to become a business English professional, as I said, needs to upskill and learn a lot more. For example, there are many different aspects in business that our students are using and needing, and these aren't necessarily things that we've been teaching in a general English class. So through learning, maybe taking some courses in basic business just to understand where the student comes from, and then working on specific skills such as negotiation, presentation, of course, learning about intercultural skills, and possibly learning specifically what your students are dealing with for vocabulary and writing. So by skilling up, I think these are the main things that teachers need to do in order to become business English professionals.